It's an honor and privilege for me to welcome each one of you, the Honorable Vice Chancellor, Father Abraham, our Pro Vice Chancellor, Father Jose, respected directors, fathers, deans, department heads, program coordinators, other leaders in the university. 2021, the year has begun, and we have requested the Registrar of the University, Dr. Anil Joseph Pinto, to open the leadership conversation session this year by sharing reflections on a theme that I think is important for all of us as leaders at the university. Dr. Pinto did his master's in English literature, MPhil dissertation in Konkani literature, and PhD on the self-translations of Girish Karnad. His doctoral work was in the larger domain of translation studies, and he has interests within translation studies, especially in self-translations, Konkani literature, digital culture, and history of higher education, especially after his position as registrar of the university. He's been doing a lot of work in the area of higher education. And today's leadership conversation will also revolve around some of the insights that he has picked up from his experience and also from his intellectual journey in the area of higher education. He's an avid blogger. So I would invite those of you who aren't aware of his blogspot. It's anilpinto.blogspot.com. It's in the email that we sent to you, and Sam will put that up in the chat box for you as well to have a look at his blogspot. It kind of reflects how, as administrators, professors, and teachers, we can constantly be in touch with the community and the people that we serve. He's currently the registrar of the university, and I think a lot of you here know him as the registrar of the university. He's also academically the associate professor in theater, in the Department of Theater and Performing Arts here at Christ. He also directs the Center for Publications, and earlier was a visiting fellow and visiting scholar at the Baylor University in Texas, United States, and the Chinese University of Hong Kong in Hong Kong. That's a summary of his bio. There's much more to what makes him who he is today, and I would encourage all of you to experience that through today's leadership conversation. And for those of you who interacted with him personally, you would have experienced who he is as a leader. Dr. Pinto will be speaking on the topic Finding Meaning in Leadership Positions in Higher Education. This is a topic where he will argue for perhaps two spaces that all of us find ourselves in from time to time as leaders. On the one hand, there are certain expectations from us in our role positions in the university, and on the other hand, there is the personal vision and expectation that we have as leaders that we want to bring to our leadership role. And Dr. Pinto is going to speak to us about how you can balance those two very important aspects of leadership, and by doing so find meaning in the kind of work that we do. And I must say, Dr. Pinto, after our initial conversation, I was teaching a group of students doing the human resource management and development in psychology, and one of the more important variables in sustaining leadership in organization is the meaning that we can find in the work that we do. So when the odds are perhaps not that great for us, at the end of the day, we fall back on the personal meanings that we create. So I think your presentation will be helpful for us, and I look forward to listening to what you have to say today to us through this conversation. For the members of the audience, Dr. Pinto will speak and share his ideas and thoughts through a brief presentation, after which we'll open this up for a conversation. So I encourage you to please share your reflections in the chat box. And after his presentation, we'll take up some of your reflections and questions and continue the conversation. And then we'll wind up from announcements and any directions from our Vice Chancellor before we wind up the session. So welcome, Dr. Pinto. Thank you for agreeing to speak to us. And I'm handing over the session to you. You have the presentation right, so you can go ahead and start your presentation. You're not muted.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, what I said was, thank you, Dr. Tony, for the introduction, kind invitation, and this opportunity. And at this point, I very fondly and with gratitude remember plenty of people who have taken me under their wings right from my college, maybe from pre-university level onwards, something that they thought maybe I might do something, and kept guiding, investing, giving me opportunities. And until, and in Christ University, the previous Vice Chancellor, the present Vice Chancellor, the contribution is huge. And of course, many of my colleagues, including you. So I remember all of them with gratitude, and many of my views are also shaped by these experiences. What I will do is I will maybe run the PPT at the end. I will speak from the notes that will be in the PPT. I am especially my colleagues who grew up in the Department of English perhaps know me more for my theories, which probably never made sense, rather than more grounding, out of the experience talk. But today I will actually do that, which is that not use any theories or concepts, but try and speak from how I grew in my views about leadership. So first of all, and of course, I have two corrections to make, and these are because some old CV that went out of the office, which I didn't bother to check which one was when. Two things have come there which I want to correct them. One is that I'm not the director of the Center for Publications. I never was. I was a coordinator. Director of the Center for Publications is Father Jose. I noticed it pretty late. And also that my blog was very active. I was extremely active blogger until 2012, till I became registrar, till 2014. And once my academics took a backseat, the blog has also dwindled, except for a little bit of teaching in PhD. But the blog is extremely active, and that goes the idea of knowledge being free and accessible to everybody, and one should share freely. That's a concept that is there. First of all, where do my views come from? In psychology, there is which I used to teach, psychoanalysis, which I used to teach before becoming registrar. And there's one concept from Jacques Lacan of a subject. Of course, it begins much earlier with Freud and others, but Lacan gives a very interesting turns to that, Jacques Lacan. And he says that he gives I think it is he or somebody else, gives the idea of auditorium. All of us are sitting in an auditorium. All of us who are in this group, we are sitting in an auditorium. And in this auditorium, just like any auditorium, there are people like Father Vice Chancellor must be sitting in the stage watching all of us. I may be sitting next to him, finance officer is next to him, CEO is next to him, and we're all watching down. And then there are, of course, staff and students and HODs, deans sitting in different rows of the auditorium. And our behavior in this institution and experience in institution is very closely linked to where we sit, right? For example, the people sitting on the stage are constantly, for example, I don't go to movies much. I don't go to pubs even if I want to, because I know I'm constantly watched, right? Wherever you don't know who is watching, who is not watching, right? So in that sense, our world gets very, very, in a sense, limited, right? And many times I sometimes think the loneliest person in Christ University will be the Vice Chancellor, who is the Vice Chancellor, because he's under intense gaze. And you can see there's only one person in his office, and whoever's the Vice Chancellor, present, future, whatever, they'll be the loneliest people on earth. And depending on your hierarchy, your loneliness, will increase or decrease, right? So Lacan calls this subject, right? So the person sitting near the door in the front row, that person's experience is different. That person knows I can slip out slowly, go to the toilet and come back. Whereas the person sitting in the center of the row knows I cannot. Everybody will watch me if I go to the toilet, and the person will not go to the toilet, right? So all of us, the way we function in this institution, in the society general, are limited by these roles where we are seated in the larger structure of the society. And from there, we behave in certain ways, don't behave in certain ways. And of course, some of them will try to outgrow those positions. There are people just break it out. I say, look, it doesn't matter. It's my thing. I will quietly, without disturbing, go to the toilet and come back and sit in the first row in the center. And some people will do that. Most won't do that, right? And those at the back, so those in the back are probably enjoy freedom most. They are under least gaze, or those may be in the last gaze. The person in the front row may be intense gaze of the Vice Chancellor and those sitting on the stage, but person in the last row is least, so they can go out, come in, they can do something, watch a mobile phone and many things. So in the organization, this is how I see people functioning. And that's why the whole idea in which we take out the anonymity, making people comfortable becomes extremely important, or find ways to try and change those chairs and positions, not by making HOD and not HOD and Dean one more day, not so the idea, but giving them a different context. You go out somewhere where you are no HOD, not Dean, something like that helps in trying to be who we are. Now, I'll stay with this imagery of auditorium. Now, in the auditorium, of course, there will be a table, right? Vice Chancellor will be a registrar or whoever will be sitting on the stage, and there'll be a table, right? Now, and of course, there are a lot of tables, let's say, in the auditorium. So the Vice Chancellor will have a view, or, central administration will have a view of all the tables and chairs in the auditorium. Now, this view is not available for anybody else in the auditorium. Whatever you do, you can't get. The only one who is sitting in the stage will get this complete view, including how far they're sitting from the roof and all that. That view, central administrator will get. I will get it. Johnny sir will get it. For the vice chancellor will get it. For the pro vice chancellor will get it. CFO will get it. So we will get this view. Of course, in the case of deans will get that limited view of their particular auditorium, which is their department and students. And of course, if you're in central administration, then you get it across campuses, across departments, and you get a much more holistic or a more of a realistic view of the people whom you work with. But at the same time, because where you are, what you see differs. For example, what the vice chancellor will see when he looks down, probably all the clean tables and to some extent the cobwebs. But what vice chancellor or I will not able to see is the cobwebs under our own tables. That we will not have a view to see because stay with the imagery. But all the staff and the students who are watching, the first look will be on the cobwebs or first look will be on the face and the table. Then suddenly you can start seeing all the cobwebs under the table. Now, interestingly, this cobweb view is not available to the central administration. What are these? What is this chair where I'm sitting, right? This chair I'm sitting is my own upbringing. This chair I'm sitting is the schools I went to, the religion I belong to, the region I belong to, where I come from, whether I came from a village, theatre town, a town, city, where did I come from? The views, and I very strongly believe, and of course I have enough personal data to back what I say now, the subjects you studied, the subject we study have a far, far more impact on how we think and how we behave and how we go about doing a task every day than we all assume. It's extreme impact. I can see when a law teacher walks into my office, literature teacher walks into my office, science teacher walks into my office, you can very clearly see they behave differently. And if you see this over every day, you start seeing patterns, right? You give a certain task in science, most likely it'll happen. You give it to a social science literature, there'll be a lot of debates, right? Getting things done is harder in science, easier in engineering, right? But I'm not saying, therefore, engineering is better, or science is better, or social science is better. I'm saying they bring in something else, insight, for example, right? If you want people to intensely critique an idea, well, the science teachers do not sometimes make the best. It is a social science you have to get. They'll pick an idea, pick an issue for the sake of picking, right? Which is very difficult to see it in engineering or in general. I'm saying there are broad exceptions, but in general. Well, these are our chairs where we sit. This is what we see and don't see, and this is how and where we sit, where we get to see, are shaped by all these experiences that we come from. So my own view comes from all that what I mentioned that I have gone through. So what has been my one question? I'm looking at my journey largely during my tenure of last 8 years as the registrar. I completed I think 7 years, 7 years last November. This is my 8th year as the registrar. And so one of my initial feeling whenever I used to see HODs and deans who would not bring any initiatives, they're just there, they will maintain the system, they will do CIA follow-up, they'll do CA follow-up, you ask you to say organize students, they'll organize students. So there are HODs and deans do just that. There will be never a new idea that will at least significantly that IC or VC would come from them. So I used to feel very angry, very upset, right? Why is this HOD not doing? Why is not HOD not? But having spent 8 years and gone through a lot in different circumstances, my understanding is much different now. I believe that it is because, of course, there are inherent abilities a person has, which will make you or not make certain things, but do certain tasks given to your hand. Most HODs deans will do the task, follow up, CIA, inauguration, all that. They check up the attendance and all they'll do. And the second part, which is more important, lead beyond what the tasks are given to an HOD or dean. So what helps? What I think helps? Of course, environment helps. Environment, Christ University helps, right? The same person who's performing certain things here in another environment probably won't be able to do certain tasks. So environment certainly helps. What else helps, in my view? For a HOD, for example, because there are many, so let me take that, or a coordinator of a program, what helps is one, what I think my HOD thinks about me, or what I think my dean thinks about me, what I think the registrar or vice chancellor thinks about me. That plays a very significant role in how I will function. If the impression that, oh, I think vice chancellor or my dean or my HOD has a positive view about me, will actually enable you to do a lot more things. Maybe there's nothing, I mean, it's just a perception. Then, and in case if you ever feel, at any point you feel that I think I'm in the bad books of the vice chancellor or dean or HOD, there's going to be a very significant downward swing in the performance of that particular coordinator or HOD or a dean. Second is what I think about myself, right? So, and this of course is extremely strong thing, right? So certain people say, look, I mean, whatever you do, this is how I am, this is how I will do things, right? This won't affect me, right? There are people who write and say, so that affects what I think about what I think, which way do I think, some idea about myself, not a very intensely reflected who I am, but even just a sense of me affects how I do. Third is this is most important, my prior experiences with the teams I lead and or follow, that intensely experience. For example, let's say in the department you had a very intense fight with a colleague, and now you become HOD. Throughout HOD tenure, this is going to determine how you will give certain tasks to that person, not give tasks, not to department, what kind of comments they will think about me. That will intensely affect. Or for example, I mean, this is possible, that's why, and I'm saying it for a purpose. For example, if you had a relationship with a colleague in your department, right, or a deanery, now that is going to be forever a thorn, right? That will make you do certain things or not do certain things, because you constantly think how somebody will react to that particular thing. But beyond this, there are two aspects I think very, very importantly affect how do we perform as leaders. First, I mean, these are important. Three things I said. Three things. What my dean, HOD thinks, what I think vice chancellor, dean, HOD thinks about me. Two, what I think about myself. And third, what my prior experience is with the teams I lead. These three things affect. But what affects most, and this is where I come from, is values that I hold and vision that I have. And most important of the two is values, not vision. Because vision will, for me, come out of the values that I hold. For example, by values, I don't mean love, liberty, truth and justice, right? Those are, I'm saying, two grand values. But I'm saying that, for example, I value, for example, when I see people who are running around, in my office, or students running around, staff running around for a small task, if that hurts me, that's a value that I value, that people should have more comfortable life. Life should be easier as much as possible for people to do their tasks. Now that's a value to me. I mean, right? It's not a grand value like a justice, truth, or whatever else. Or for example, whenever I see people around on the roads, struggling, it hurts me. Right? It's a value. Your heart beats for that. Now, the moment you have that, for example, if I see somebody running around for a table, and in the moment I notice, then I immediately start saying there's some problem with the system. There are some problem with the process flow, right? So then I will start working with the process flow. Now, this is innovation. I'm going beyond, but it cannot happen unless I have a value of a heart that feels that I feel frustrated when people run around for a small task, right? Or I will start taking some names, and I will be not taking most of the names, even if you have done far more than these. These are just for case studies, so it doesn't mean that it's affected by the relationship I have or I do not have. For example, the Dr. Shobana has started Sujana. Sujana is a program where English Department of MA English students go out to the LR Nagar slum and other places, and they go and teach the students. Dr. Tony, you'll have to stop me. I have another three major points, but you can stop anytime and I will go back here. The last point is quick, but 2 points are a little larger. Now the point is that, I mean, it comes from, and she's done that, but it comes from the larger idea where, she feels, people who are underprivileged is a way we can read. And she also feels the value of sensitizing students who will then may or may not, but go on difference, right? So unless you have that, you cannot come out with these, right? Or Biju Toms has similarly done with the adopting colleges in Chikmagalur, right? So he has done an extremely good job of bringing those students here, faculty here, giving them space to compete with the other students without any charge of their inter college competition. Now, why does he do that? There's an intense feeling for the underprivileged that he has, and there's something he should not do, right? So unless we have that, my innovation cannot come. I will not passionately develop those things. So value is extremely important, and value, as I said, I don't know what the right word, but not value in the sense of as I said, the grand values I mentioned about. So value is extremely important for visions to evolve. And if you don't have these values, your visions will not evolve. Or they will evolve in certain areas and not in certain areas. For example, somebody might think about certain kind of coaching, right? The person may not be interested in underprivileged and the people who struggle around, which is fine. Right? But is there something else? Somebody thinks that next world is digital world. I must do something, put more people in that, which is fine, right? Which is not what another person who's thinking about the society and underprivileged may be thinking about. But this value of, yes, the institution should gear up for the future, that intensely burns, then the person will come out with a lot more initiatives. So so what helps people lead? I think two things we normally do and I will reflect on what helps people lead. We do two things in the institution. I already referred to them. One is that we do daily tasks like CIA, checking up, approving leaves, approving publications and all that. The other is, what is that the institution is doing or my department doing, do I want to build on or start a new initiatives, right? Now and this is very important, most 90% of the leaders, or 95% leaders, their excitement about the job will end when the initial learning in the job will end. When the moment you become HOD or a Dean, registrar, it will take, about at least 3 years to really figure out what is this whole system about. Till then, somebody is saying this, you give that, somebody is asking that, you do that. Your mind is trying to just cope with what is being asked for. But after about 3 years, and certainly after 5 years, you figure out the ropes, right? How much, if they ask, will they threaten me, I'll lose my job, for what I will lose my job, but I will not lose my job, all those things you are aware. So you learn how much to, push and give and not give in this 5 years. I was in Hong Kong 2-3 years ago, where they had called me for a consultation on higher education leadership training across the world. And before going, I was asking a previous vice chancellor, and I asked him one question: how long should vice chancellor be vice chancellor? How many years, right? Or not just vice chancellor, in institutional head, so the supreme head of the institution. How long? What should the tenure? And he said something very interesting. He said 15 years. And I didn't ask him why 15 years. And then I asked somebody else in another college in South India, which is a women's college, and done exceedingly well. I asked the principal, how long do you think you should, then because that college is innovated, I've been to that college, I've seen, the innovation they're doing. I said, how long should you be the principal? And she said, max 5 years. And I said, 6th year, I didn't know what I was doing. And 7th year, I completely lost meaning in what I was doing. And I'm glad I am now no more the principal. Then I shared this in the meeting in Hong Kong, and they said that your previous vice chancellor had to do many things. He had to make it autonomous, he had to make it deemed university, then set up systems, right? So it takes 15 years, right? Whereas for the principal, that college, it was already autonomous. It didn't have to become autonomous again. So the person had the horizon the institution offered were limited. Of course, I'm sure they didn't have a management or a possibility of becoming deemed university. So the task that we are going to put for ourselves is what is going to sustain our passion and meaning for leadership, right? So once the 3-year term ends, once your 5-year term ends, the only way you will find meaning, the only way every morning you will get up and run to your office, as teachers, remember, our passion can sustain till we retire, because the students, especially in Christ, every year new students, their challenges are different, questions are different. Every year the cream seems to be becoming better and better. That will keep pushing us, right? I feel that as a teacher, it's like till you retire or till you want to retire. Till then, your passion, goes on. But as academic leaders, it's the period of 3 years, max 5 years, right? Beyond that, you need to have ideas of your own, visions of your own, which needs to keep driving you to keep yourself going, especially if you're one of those who does not aspire for leadership positions. And there are many HODs who have told previous vice chancellor, present vice chancellor, Father, I don't want to be HOD, please find somebody else. And the vice chancellor will decide whether whether the person agrees with it or not agrees with it, and that's the vice chancellor's prerogative and decision, right? But the point is that there are most of the leaders that we have in Christ are not leaders who aspire to be there. They are just pulled and they are there because they've been asked to, but they do extremely well finding meaning in them. And there are people who really enjoy leadership positions, right? Both things are fine, and institution needs all of that. So what we need to do as an institution, for me, are these two things. One is that build on the values the faculty has, or what we call value strengths, because there are also weak values, right, which we don't have to support. But strong values, so values of strength, is something that HODs, deans, registrar, vice chancellor, all of us, finance officer, all of us have to, pro vice chancellor, all of us have to try and build and nurture their visions. This institution has to grow. It cannot be an idea that comes from vice chancellor or a dean or HOD. This institution can grow only if each faculty comes out with small visions and ideas, and all of us, starting from coordinators to the vice chancellor, we all nurture those ideas, right? For me, this is how institution has grown, and this is the only way this institution will continue to grow. And the day we don't do that, this institution stops growing. And those visions can be coming from a historic idea of a university, philosophical idea of university, the vision, mission, and core values of the institution, strategic plan, MHRD, UGC, ICT initiatives, any of these, which is fine. But this is where something that we have to nurture each person's dreams and visions for themselves. So I have some 10 points, 10 sutras, what I think is what HOD and Dean should do. And that's my last point, Tony, sir. One is, what I think the HODs Dean should do. I mean, it's maybe slightly unlinked to what I've said so far, but what I think quickly, what HODs and Deans do. The first thing I think all HODs and Deans should do is spot talent, spot future leaders, right? Whether, I mean, for example, you find this is a wonderful material for registrar's post, this is a wonderful material for Dean's post, and they may say, just join. They probably will achieve that in the next 10 years or 15 years. Start nurturing them. Maybe they will never become, that's okay. Right? They'll become something else that we didn't think of. That's fine. But take them under the wings and start giving them exposure. Start giving them, most important, exposure. Give them opportunities. You don't have to tell them anything. Just giving them opportunities, and they will start growing in those opportunities. Second, and this is very, very important, especially in Christ, now that we have grown so big that it's so difficult to know each other, especially for vice chancellor, registrar, the central administration, which make decisions on leadership, to know who is the next leader, next HOD, next dean, next center that we're going to set up. We need people. So I would request every HOD, dean, coordinator to speak to the HOD, dean, registrar, vice chancellor, saying that, look, there is this talent. Why don't you start giving opportunities? Why don't you, if at all you think about this particular person, right? This person probably will become a good talent. So far, I have had only one person walking into my office and saying that, one HOD saying that, look, why don't you give opportunity to this person? This person really has a talent and he can do that. But I think, I for a while, until then, thought otherwise. But because this particular person thought, I began to think intensely, okay, I think this is a talent that we should look up maybe in the 5 years or next 10 years from now. So please speak up to your reporting authorities and others. I mean, here in some sense, everybody's reporting authority, saying that this is a person I think we should look at for this particular role in the future. Role may be there, may not be there now. Third is most important, now that we will see, so we've had a system where leaders were here for long. I mean, some of the HODs have been here for 25 years, 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, right? Very long. It's almost like you're appointed to retire. That's the kind of a structure we've had. This has to change and will change. And the new rule that the management has brought in is that the general appointment for all HODs is 3 years, right? And extendable by 3 years, every 3 years, right? This is not necessarily because you're performing or not performing, but because what is the kind of a leadership you want in the department now that department has reached a particular level? What is the next curve we need and who will fit in that? It's not about who is the best person we have in the department, but for this next curve, who is the best person? That is the question, right? So So when these new people are appointed, deans, HODs, it is our job. For example, if the next vice chancellor is appointed, or for example, Father Abraham was appointed, it is my job to go and brief him constantly about various things about the institution. If a new dean is appointed, it is the job of all the HODs under him or her to go and tell them, look, this is how it is, this is how it is, because they will take time, right? On the first day or first year, they're under intense, pressure to perform, because vice chancellor may be having, they imagine certain expectations of the vice chancellor on their part, and they will start working within that and may miss out, right? They may not understand, and it takes time, because we don't understand because somebody tells. We understand better because we experience, right? So they will take time, at least 1 year. New HODs are appointed, they'll take time. So it's important for you to make them, educate them, that's my word, about how the department is, how the things are, how they should go on. And because they themselves be under pressure not to ask you those questions, because they may feel threatened, or they may feel they may not want to, but it's important, our job, to educate them. Next is create psychological safety and for all the staff in your department to say what they think about an idea, what you do, right? And this is where one of the things that helps is regular meetings. Like for the vice chancellor has asked, I think, all these departments to meet, not I think, he has asked, every department should meet. And this is where when you start talking every day, one is that your bond builds, but also psychological safety increases. And you can always know that the department where the meetings are rare, psychological safety is very, very low. I mean, I actually have a data of department which are uploading minutes and not uploading minutes. And you can always say the departments where psychological safety is less is where meetings are less as well. Right? So psychological safety is extremely important, so that we reduce on errors, new initiatives come up, new ideas come up, and you will spot the visions of each person and the values that they have. And that's why meetings are extremely important. But point is, create psychological safety. Give newer learning opportunities. Learning opportunities could be as much as possible. And almost every year, all of us, I don't know how, I mean, for me it's easy, my department office is smaller. I just have some 3 or 4 people to really, build on, repair, give them opportunities. But in your department, of course, there are more. But you need to find, as a HOD or as a dean, every year there should be something new that the person has opportunity to grow with. Something new. I mean, that's something you have to think, right? What each person can grow, and you create those opportunities for each person, and that's your responsibility, not theirs. Next is do check on their family life. I mean, of course, this has to be a particular point beyond which you should not never go. But at least I think you should know how many people the person lives with. Do they have any ailments? What are the major worries they have, right? Without giving them any advice, but to listen. And I think that's something extremely important to build the psychological safety and bonding. Encourage anytime any learning, anything learning is unconnected to the institution and what they're doing. If they want to learn something new, like for example, literature digital learning, stock exchange, I mean, no connection, but please encourage, because institution over the period will find a value for that particular idea the person has. But please encourage learning. And 8th point is take care of yourself emotionally, physically, and spiritually, right? One, of course, the higher the hierarchy you are, the greater is the need to take care of yourself emotionally, right? So for the vice chancellor should take care of emotionally much more than all of us. And I should be next, or Johnny sir, because the pressure point keeps increasing as you take up and most of the time, the one thing that you do all the time is eat and drink pressure, right? That keeps coming in a lot of ways. And it improves sometimes over a period of time, but take care of it emotionally. And second is physically, like doing exercises every day. It helps in the emotional mentality and spiritually as well. And of course, eating healthy, that's part of taking care of oneself physically. A 9th point is build social sensitivity in Christ University. I mean, this is most important, our vision, mission, core values, everything, not mission so much, but vision, and also is mission. Talk about a lot about why our students should be sensitive to society, right? I was visiting with Dr. Tony and some of the others, the CSA sites, Kolar and Kolar and Hoskote and slums. And one of the things I'm constantly thinking was that I was asking which department sends students, which students come here offer. Of course, I understand the department that sends most students and blocks all the slots is PU College, right? But in the university, there are only just 1 or 2 departments which intensely try and focus on giving social sensitivity to their students, right? Not more than 1 or 2. Some of them do a few, but all the students should go through this social exposure, or just one or two departments. And I want this, the university to focus. I mean, that is not a major focus. We all know, we are very sure our major task is very clear: teaching and research, right? But then if there's a way, but that part of it should go towards sensitizing ourselves, our colleagues and students in social issues, right? It's not about discussing in the open, but taking them to rural areas, make them stay there overnight. And one of the biggest challenge I asked them, the biggest challenge they said, is not the student interest. Students are really interested. It is the staff not available to accompany the students even for one night in a year. There are no staff available, and they have to cancel programs in the last minute because the faculty says, I cannot come now, right? This is a faculty of 1,000, but look at the dearth of the faculty to really take care of the students, and in terms of their social sensitivity, which is pretty sad, extremely sad, because service is in the vision, but you find that as a practice goes, it seems to be more of a talk rather than action on the ground. And the last, and this is the most important point that I would like to stress on, which is the last point I'll close with. And this is, if at all you don't remember anything else, this is one point I want you to remain, is that always have something to build, right? Now, for example, and I will tell you what in my mind are. Now, one of the things that I'm working very hard on is scholarship support cell, right? So I always had this feeling that we should try and help students to get a scholarship, but it was in there a couple of years. It was not somehow shaping in my head. And recently, when it began to get a shape, I began to work with a team and put a small team together. And I said I had two assumptions. One assumption: students don't apply. A lot of students. Please remember, we have 300 students who are taking midday meal, but the students who are getting excellent scholarships is less than 150 out of 25,000, right? So, I mean, you already see a need, and they are not doing it. So I said, somehow something we should do. Then I said there are two assumptions I had. One assumption is that students don't know which way is opportunity. Second, they don't know whom to go and ask for help. These are two assumptions I had. So we set up a scholarship cell, create an ID, send to all the students. And once we sent, we began to get per day 300 email queries. Can you help me with this? And of course, now we are developing material that each scholarship brief data, what is it about, what are deadlines, what documents are required, how much money you will get, and all that. So we are developing those and circulating. And my goal is by this year and by next year, we should reach 1,000 scholarships externally funded. And next 4-5 years, we should reach 5,000 scholarships which are external. That is my larger goal. I mean, looks too ambitious, but I think that's one thing I have. The other thing I'm thinking is we should have an alumni office cell where any student who wants internship should go to that cell, one office, and that office should know entire database of the alumni, and they should connect them saying, look, this is a person looking internship, can you help? Because you know what they work doing, where they are. Somebody says, look, I want an internship in Singapore. We should have a database, and we say, look, this is a person, can you touch? They may say, no, that's okay, but we put them in touch and say, would you like to help? And it doesn't take a lot of people, just maybe 1 or 2 people. That's the other idea that I would like to develop. The two things that I'm keen on developing in the next couple of years. And of course, we remember the biggest reward to you is always not that when you look back, when you retire, how many things I achieved. The biggest credit to you is when you look back and everybody says it is my initiative, although you know that you are the one who initiated that, right? That is the biggest achievement, I think, for a leader when you retire. And I'll end with a quote. Because of the emphasis I gave on you encouraging other people to learn and you learning yourself, is a quote that is often attributed to Da Vinci. I don't know whether he said it. I heard it somewhere else, and parroting it thereafter. One is, learning is the only thing the mind never exhausts, never fears, never regrets. Thank you.
Dr. Pinto, thank you for those insights and for that sharing. Let me continue the conversation by taking up a reflection that came in the chat box from Dr. Satyaseelan. He said that he agrees with you that our disciplinary training kind of influences the way we fashion our leadership. So my question to you is this in any way limiting? And is there a scope for leaders, despite our disciplinary leanings, to improve our repertoire of skills and worldview when it comes to leadership? Because in a leadership position, we are obviously working with much more than what a discipline has trained us to work in. Some thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks. I think yes, there are ways. One, of course, is to then train yourself, in a different discipline. For example, one of the ways I try to do that, there's a time I suddenly immediately realized that literature has limited me so much, and I wanted to break away from that. I began to enroll for courses in law, philosophy of science. Then I began to read Economic Times every day and Mint every day, because my finance knowledge is so, not now. I mean, I'm talking about somewhere 2005, 2006. So that I somehow get these numbers in my head, because literature people normally are trained to hit numbers, and anything structural, more organized, you're taught to. I mean, in a sense, nobody tells it, but because of training, you start doing that, and intensive train that, or take up courses in certain areas. So like, for example, one of the courses that I've been longing to take is an accountancy, right? Because I need to improve my number thing. So one of the ways is to take learning into your hands, right? So in a way, our parents and the institutions we went to, they structure our learning. Like, for example, in Christ University or most universities in India, if you want to learn accountancy and media and philosophy, you don't have a choice. Right? So our institutions also structure how we want to learn. So one of the ways is to see, can you take the learning into your control beyond the hands of your parents, your spouses, your institutions where you study, and that is one way I think one can consciously do that, so your mind also starts doing that. And the other is to, of course, like you become a CFO, automatically you learn, your skills will change, because every day you get hit so badly. And if you're a literature person, become a CFO, or you become a control of examinations, then you are forced to pull up those skills because the position you are in. But the thing better is always, even without a position, you try and what I call fracture yourself. You fracture your learning and your disciplinary training, and that, of course, will help in a long way as well. Thanks.
Thank you for that reflection. I'm just going to take off a second reflection from Professor Mallika Krishnaswamy, who is saying that, who's actually asking, how do we get people around us to motivate us to realize a vision? So if we have a particular vision or a value that we want to do, we want to accomplish, how does one get people around to motivate them to realize that vision?
Getting people around is extremely important. Like, for example, when I wanted to set up this scholarship about cell, I'm talking about, that's one I'm now currently working, is that I first found, because I remember I have a very small office, just 3 staff, and actually full-time is only 3 of them, and there's 1 half-timer and all that. It's a very small office. So you don't have really people. I mean, I don't know if you realize this. You probably don't realize this, that one of the most powerful people in institutions is a HOD of a department, right? It is not the vice chancellor, not the registrar, not the dean, because you give one command, you want to organize, you have an army of 2,000 people, or at least a few hundred people to make that happen. You have a department, 60 people, 30 people. I mean, you don't realize how much power it is there if HOD really wants to do things and has the the diplomacy and the skill to get things done. It's huge, massive. Now imagine I want to organize a conference. How do I organize? I can't, because I don't have a department I can order to, right? My staff have their regular tasks. If they don't do it, institution stops. Like, certificates don't go out, calls will start, emails will fly, right? There is nothing I can do. They have to do their jobs every day. Institution stops otherwise. So the most powerful people in the institution are HODs. So how do we get is, and therefore finding the people. So what I did, I gave it a task to a person from reception, one person from my office, and I gave them some tasks. It was not moving at all. And then I suddenly remembered Mr. Anthony, who is a staff at Institute of Management. I've been eyeing him for a long time. My office staff told me he's good some 2-3 years ago. And ever since then, I have been keeping a sharp eye on him. Is there a way I can bring him here? Unfortunately, Jane Matthew brought him to Central Block, and I grabbed him. And I put him in charge of AICT, and he does very meticulously. And now I'm putting in scholarship support cell, do that. And it's a fantastic job. Finding a person is the most crucial thing. I mean, in any HOD department, any HOD department is as good as the HODs, right? The HODs are not good, or sometimes dean, because sometimes the deans are a lot more creative and strong, then they will lead the whole department. It's only as strong as the dean. I mean, it's not as strong as the vice chancellor or anybody else. You don't get a good HOD or a dean to lead the department, stagnates for years together, right? That's central. So getting people is first, then empowering them, overlooking the mistake. For example, I don't know how many mistakes I've done, and I'm grateful to the management, they've overlooked every single mistake that I have done. Many times I realize maybe there are things I don't realize, and that's extremely important. Overlooking the mistakes and say, okay, this we can focus on how do we resolve it. Not saying that why did you do that? Let's get, or you want to get into analysis, only get into analysis so that can you put the systems in place so that this mistake doesn't happen, but not to understand why the mistake happened. That's not important for us. What is important is we resolve that, right? And if you want to know why it happened, only to improve the system, you try and find out, otherwise don't find out, right? So this is important to give them that constant hearing, support, and then overlook their mistakes and see in what ways they need support. For example, scholarship cell, one support I constantly do is that I ask them to draft the one pager on each scholarship, and then I go through in detail, right? Now, that is key area where they don't have skill. But I don't bother, I just say, can you send to all these? And then they will send that. I don't have to keep checking how they have sent, where they are, how many have gone. I just go by what the person has said. So it's important to just overlook the mistakes that they do and focus on how do we, give opportunities to them to, do better, right? And of course, you cannot empower people who cannot be empowered, right? So you need to find the right person. And of course, you have what you have. Like I have only 3, I will not get more. Right? Then I have to find ways outside to see, through my goodwill and connection, being nice to them is a way I can try and pull them in to do some of the tasks that, I want to envision. And sometimes, of course, like I want to set up alumni cell, I can't do that. I will require Vice Chancellor permission. Of course, this scholarship also was permitted by Vice Chancellor, but we need to appoint somebody else. I can't do that. My office staff can't do that. Then I need somebody else who's been here longer, I know, and who has complete idea about it, and maybe too strong clerical staff, right? And then the system will take off. So persons are key, and you'll have to figure out how to build it.
Dr. Pinto, taking off from some of your initial comments about how we ourselves can be a limitation to what we want to achieve. You spoke about 4 points in the beginning of your conversation, about what I think of myself and what others think of me and so on. I'm thinking that I want to ask you, do you think there have been situations in your own personal reflection where we as leaders, I'm speaking collectively about all of us, have been perhaps a single most barrier to a change just because we haven't had that ability to get a reflection from outside of us? And is that a challenge you face, or is that a risk that we might go through?
Yes, it's always true, right? The biggest limitation of all of your departments, HODs listening here, is yourself, right? Because of who you are, right? Fortunately for me, that is a linear reporting. There's nobody reports to me directly in some sense, except my 3 staff, right? There's a parallel reporting to, Vice Chancellor, Finance Officer, and others. So I don't have anybody directly reporting to me except my 3 staff. But in the case of the department, they are really reporting to you. They're not superseding and reporting to the dean, right? Or in other words, or HODs report to dean. Now there, the limitation of HODs, the staff, the faculty is their HOD. Period. So then you need to see, for example, for me, like when I became, when the previous registrar was there, who was very good with the finance and certain things, a lot of financial consultation happened with the registrar, right? But when I became, of course, my financial knowledge was zero, not a little better now, but it was complete zero. Then all the finance was moved to Father Varghese, who was then the finance officer. Now, the person above that will have to think, but in the case of HODs, you don't have much of a space because they're like a complete head. Like they say the most powerful police officer in the entire hierarchy is a superintendent of police, because the entire police force is under his or her command. It is not under the IGP or whoever else, whatever title, the only titles. The person who actually has complete control is a superintendent of police, right? Similarly, in the case of institutions, HOD, right? So that's why the burden of trying to learn more and expand ourselves becomes both emotionally, academically, all that. For example, new idea academically, comes. You don't see, and you will block it. And it happens all the time. I'm sure there are many ideas people bring to me. I don't understand, therefore probably I don't support them, right? Or sometimes I say go to Vice Chancellor and talk, or go to Dean and talk, because I don't understand that idea. So our limitation becomes the institutional limitation. My personal limitation, either academically, emotionally, skill-wise, becomes, or value, becomes a limitation of my entire department. That cannot be helped. And one way, this is where institution has to come in and either try and, like, finance was moved to Father Varghese when I became registrar, will have to be done. But I think when it comes to the HODs and also deans, this is very difficult. How do you do that? Because they report to all. But yes, I think that's a pain point. Institutions leadership development has to go around this. Counseling has to go around this, and the individual HODs and deans effort to try and see how do I try and change that. Also, when you may not succeed, it's okay, but at least I think some attempt constantly should be there. Thank you.
And I think the flip side of that, Dr. Pinto, is that the HODs, deans, coordinators are also the agents of organizational culture change.
Yes.
And I was reading this morning a case study of Kent State University, a public university in the United States, where the administration collectively decided that a culture of health and well-being should be the cornerstone of that university's strategic plan, primarily because the mental health challenges of the students in that university was above the national average. So that data set prompted them from the central administration and the leadership to actually generate a culture of health and well-being. And that kind of a strategy really worked, as against a strategy where a few groups of people here and there, or a few centers here and there, try to establish a culture. I'm bringing this discussion up because of 2 points. One is a word that you constantly said towards the end of your presentation was support, especially when you spoke about the scholarship cell. And our Chief Security Officer, Mr. Venkatesulu, has made a reflection about the importance of career counseling in the university. And this is something we've been hearing for a while in our university, that students need direction and support. So my question to you is, do you find any challenge in establishing a university-wide culture of support and care for our students? What are the drawbacks you probably face, and what are your expectations from us, if that's not too much?
Yeah, this is the biggest question. Yes, I think we're doing a lot in terms of student support. I mean, I'm seeing this. I've looked at how the universities across the world support being there, looking at them, talking to them, primarily in the US and a little bit in the Europe and in Hong Kong. And yes, so there are two things. Institutionally, I think we support our students a lot, right? So, for example, the counselors, right? I mean, this is, what is the pass percentage of students in the US in 4 years' time? It's about some 24%, 25%. Only 20 to 25% of students pass the undergrad in 4 years' time in the US, right? And in 6 years, average is 42%. Only 42% of the students who enroll in university actually complete in 6 years' time in the US. Now you compare that with the, for example, with Christ, right? It is roughly about 92% pass rate. And that's because we may call it a coercive system, but the HOD, I mean, the deans will call, especially counselors will follow up, call them what's happening, your attendance is below 75 or 85. And that constant thing, pushes them to finish fast. And then they can, of course, do whatever they want to do with their life. So in that sense, there are a lot of support systems in the institution, right? At least you have counselors. Most institutions don't have counselors. You have student counselors. Even above that, you have informal, mental health programs. All the darpans and all these are actually help students mentally, emotionally settle down in institutions. So I mean, these are well planned. These are not just off the thing. They've been planned and kept. So in that sense, yes, we have a support system. But I think in terms of really reaching out to students and supporting, there's a very long way Christ University has to cover, and I think it requires a lot more planned and continuous improvisation system to ensure that we numbers are large, but I think it can be done. Of course, class teacher system is one. We'll have to find innovative ways. I mean, the answer is not hire more counselors. That is not the way.
Yeah.
We'll have to find some innovative ways to do, but I think there's a lot of ground to cover in terms of supporting the students more, including career. As somebody said, yes, there's a lot more ground to cover.
And I think one of the things you just said is that the institutional approach to student care and development is very strong, as evidenced by the number of services that we offer, the counseling services, and the financial support and so on. So that's very strong. Sometimes I see that those institutional supports do not trickle down into day-to-day conversations in a classroom between a teacher and students, or between a coordinator and the students, or class teachers and students. There's always a kind of a space which we do not do not get into for several reasons. And I'm wondering one of that could be from our own limitations of what we think our attachment or our buy-in to the institution should be as leaders.
Yes, I would agree.
I'm going to take one final reflection. After that, I'm going to check if our Vice Chancellor is here, if Father Abraham has some comments to make at the end. But before he does that, let me take a final reflection from Dr. Victor Paul related to, of course, the visit you had a few days back, and also shared that. Are there things we can do more than what we're doing now? Because I know we're doing a lot to build social sensitivity among, it's not students, among our teachers, because that's an area that you found to be quite challenging. Is there something where we can do?
Yes, I think yes. I think this is one constituency. I don't know, for some reason, institution throughout its history has not very strongly worked on building the social sensitivity of the faculty members. The institution has worked on the student side, but for some reason we have not done it on the side of the faculty, and most importantly, faculty leaders, the HODs and Deans. I mean, like, it's like it's maybe quite surprising that I've been here in this institution for the last 15 years, and a registrar has 8 years, and so actively involved in so many things. But this is my first visit to CSA project areas, right? So how did the institution allow this to happen? Right, of course, I could have gone myself. That thing always remains, right? But the point is that there was an institution didn't have a system to ensure I actually went through the experience, right? And this is what that worries me, because if we as an institution have to find some meaning as an institution, why we should work here, why we should, what is so special about Christ, we will have to take faculty through this experience, all of them, right? Of course, there's going to be a lot of resistance and questions, almost 2 to 3 years as to why is it important. But I think it's extremely important, right? Some of the institutional social work, what through CSA and through students, has gone parallel with the institution. They never had those interlinkages, and I think. But by the way, I'm not saying all faculty should involve in CSA work. That is what I'm saying. I'm not saying all the students should do CSA work. I'm not saying that. I'm saying this is just to spend one night and do some work and come back once in 2 to 3 years, finished, right? Just to get, see this reality that's different from us. That's all. Then I will do whatever else I want. I mean, not what CS is doing, what institution is doing, right? I might do something on my own, right? I may be helping blind students whom CS is not working, right? But that's my prior work. But I'm saying, so I'm not saying we should do the CSA work. I'm not saying that at all, right? CSA will do its work. But I'm saying use that opportunity just to connect. That's all, at least, once in 2 to 3 years in a faculty's lifetime as a cycle. Otherwise, I do see a lot of crisis with the institution in terms of meaning and values in the future, especially because we are so diverse and so big.
I know it's almost time for us to wind up. Thank you, Dr. Pinto, for this insightful conversation that we've had. And there are further conversations that are appearing in the chat box. So I'd request all of you to just look there and reflect on it further. Before I ask Father Abraham if he has some thoughts to share, let me check with Pro Vice Chancellor Father Jose if he has some thoughts to share today with all of us, after which I'll request Father Abraham to share any thoughts that he might have, and then there are announcements. I think he's just left. So, Father Abraham, are there any comments or thoughts that you would like to share to the faculty at this point?
So, thank you, Dr. Anil Pinto, for the wonderful talk. It's a spirit sharing, and also you are speaking from your heart, what you are doing, what you are planning to do this pandemic time. Yes, I appreciate your initiative in finding the students who are eligible for scholarship, or encouraging to write for the scholarship and so on. We are doing wonderful things. And the meaning, the talk was wonderful. I was noting down some points, the 10 sutras for the HODs and Deans, spot the talent and financial leaders, give them opportunities, and to know the best leaders, speak about the person. I appreciate, okay, if anybody, any HODs are coming and talking to me, he'll be good, he's nice, because I am looking for a person and people, leaders for the next campus, okay? It will be very insightful if somebody is, whether he'll be good for the department, psychology department or English department, because I want to encourage not science there, arts and humanities and social sciences should be there. So I appreciate your that kind of reflections. Creating psychological safety, that means a lot of meetings will give all the teachers to interact and express their opinions and feelings. And family life is of course very important. Encourage new learning. When I think of that, new learning means that is nothing but research, okay? Why I was happy in Christ University for the last 31 years? Because I was a teacher and I enjoyed teaching. And going to the class was my leisure time and that is my energizing time. If I was in administration for 30 years, I would have been dead now, okay? Now this limited time is there that I have targets, what to do, what not to do, and reading it up. Maybe by July end, the construction of the research block will be over. Tomorrow, for all your information, first molding of the Yesandapur campus is happening tomorrow at 11 o'clock. I'm going there. First molding, that is hostel part, will be molded first. So that is coming. That is going on. And also your points, build a social sensitivity and always have something to build. I should say something, always something to do. Every day something should be there, then motivate us to do something. That's what I want from all the HODs and deans. Yes, come with the full enthusiasm, because you are university, you are making the university. Our university is this pandemic also, it is very alive only because of you, your initiatives and your enthusiasm, and all are happy here. One point I noticed, empower people able to do wonders in the university. Everybody cannot be a leader. How many HODs we have, how many deans we have, how many coordinators we have, and everybody cannot be leader, okay? But everybody can be happy in this institution if they are passionate teachers, if they are good writers, good publishers. I am very happy to note that I already announced 500 publications, corpus publication this year, 2020 itself, whereas the total publication is 1,100 plus so far. So the teachers are enthusiastic. These are the things which gives happiness. Those who write and publish also, I can see the excitement they have when they write to the Vice Chancellor, Father, we have published these papers. I have one note, congratulations, keep it up. More than that I cannot write up, okay? Because I fully enjoy and appreciate your hard work. And also I know personally what excitement we are getting when a paper is accepted. That itself is a good news for that day. The days are made by that. So find happiness and satisfaction in publishing and recognizing your work in public. Culture of health and well-being. Then Pinto was said, that was my first topic, okay? That is first topic of my talk was happiness quotient. If you're not happy and healthy in the university, we cannot work. That's my fundamental principle, that you reiterated that, health and well-being, that is Tony was telling. I am comparing it to happiness quotient. So we should be happy. So I appreciate this wonderful work of the leadership chair in bringing 128 participants today now. All are here, all leaders and interested people are here. And you are the future of the university. You can do wonders, you can dream and make wonders. Now, announcement, I have some scattered feeling. University, the Karnataka, all the colleges are reopening after 15th of January. Yesterday, I was discussing with Dr. Anil Pinto. Sir, shall we insist all the teachers should report the university, which day you suspense? I told I am very liberal, okay? February 15th, start signing. Then I asked 3-4 people also, they agreed. By February 6th, you should be present in Bangalore. By 15th, start signing at least once in a day. Anything?
No, somebody came. I'm sorry. No,
Yeah.
sorry.
Once and one time you can continue your classes. Now teachers are scared to come to the campus. Okay. When I spoke to some BHM department faculty members, they told it took 3 days to adjust to the campus. So that should not happen when the students are coming. My intention is to bring out the first years by 1st of March. That you can have, this is scattered reflections. Okay, you can share your feelings and your comments with the registrar so that we can take a decision on 22nd when we have academic council meeting. Some decision we can take. These are not decisions, scattered thoughts. Because always, you are always in my mind. I am the loneliest person, okay? The campus. I am sitting in the big office. We are working, and a lot of things we have made possible by the new campus and so on. It's a huge task, okay? Lot of opposition, lot of blah blah. I cannot describe everything, okay? In spite of that, we are successful and to bring it in bringing it up. Thank you so much, Anil, Pinto, and Tony, for your initiatives and reflections. Keep it up. And I pass on the Tony.
Thank you, Father Abraham, for those insights, for those announcements, and the sharing of your thoughts on the points that was raised. It's encouraging as always, and thank you for leading us from the front in all situations. I want to announce that the next edition of the Leadership Conversation will be held on February 2nd, and we are going to talk about political agility and negotiation. A lot of HODs, including myself, we are scared to negotiate and use political intelligence usefully in enlarging the scope of the institution. So Professor Biju Toms from the Director Department of Professional Studies will have a conversation with us on how we can use political agility and powers of persuasion, especially working with external stakeholders for the benefit of the university. That will be our next talk. On behalf of the Vice Chancellor, I also want to announce, as mentioned to the deans by email, that we are going to run a few refresher workshops on hybrid teaching and learning and a review of online teaching and learning. Thanks to all the deans who responded. We'll wait a few more days for the others to respond on suitable dates, and then we will announce that for the benefit of the university. Once again, thank you very much, Dr. Pinto, for taking time to share your thoughts and inspire all of us. We really appreciate that. Thank you, Father Abraham, for your conclusions and for your presence and for your leadership to the university. Thank you to all my colleagues who've been here for this leadership conversation session. Wish you all a very happy 2021 and look forward to further learning as the months go by. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon.